going to set up an external data source for this location. So I'm going to go ahead and run that as well. It's also got the smarts as well, just to see if it exists or not. Often you may have scenarios where multiple people, you could be setting up different structures over similar data or using the same file format. Rather than create duplication in the system, it basically checks to see if there's a Parquet format already, and we'll just ignore it if there is. The most important part, of course, here is to actually look at the external table itself. So you remember I gave it that table name 02. It cracked open the schema. You saw it do that little check when I started the wizard. And so it's been able to infer data types from Parquet, and it's given me a table schema using the data types that are found. So the smarts there, that it's not simply reverting to your varchars only, which is always the safest data type if you don't know exactly what your date times or floats or decimals or ints potentially look like. Decimals and floats obviously look kind of similar sometimes, but it's given me this structure. It's also put the location for the file in for me, and it's picked up the names of the objects that I just created above. So here the data source is raw data, Azure Synapse, etc., etc. The file format, Synapse Parquet format. If I just scroll back up, you'll see there they are. They're actually in the reverse order that the table DDL used them, but you can see these are the objects that I created up here. Actually, the explicit name is here and here. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'll just move that down so I can see all the code to highlight it. And I'm going to create this external table. Now that took 0 seconds to run again. Remember, when I create an external table, it's purely a metadata operation. So we've taken those two inputs above, we've created the external table pointing to my data lake, but now I can simply go ahead and run this query pointing to my external table, and I have data here, and it's going to bring me back the top 100 rows in a couple of seconds. Now going forward, as I would continue to drop more Parquet data into this table, then it's going to continue to pick that up, and I'm always going to have the most recent result set for all of the data in that hierarchy. I picked a single file, but you can also point external tables, of course, to your folder structures, and I'm going to show you that a little later with respect to wildcarding in the paths and how we can handle that. Okay. So now we've looked, we dive straight into using serverless with Cosmos DB, and then we flipped over to launching a serverless query directly off the lake. And these were really, really simple examples, but it showed you really the two primary scenarios or two primary data sources that you can use for the serverless SQL today. Real-time operational data from Cosmos DB, and of course data in the data lake. I chose Parquet, but where we'll sort of head now is showing you other file formats and some slightly more complex things that you can do. And then we also looked at the external table and how you can layer that on top of a file in this case, but ultimately folders as well, to create a reusable object where you don't need the overhead of the open row set command. And so serverless really gives you that flexibility to hit a file directly or the external table, depending on your scenario. At the end of the day, it's all T-SQL. So what I'm going to do now for the next example is come back to home. And at home, you'll see there's a learn section over here. This is available to everyone, and you're actually going to be able to do this as well as I walk through this. In the Knowledge Center, I'm going to select Browse Gallery right here. And the gallery has a pretty rich set of samples across 4 key elements or aspects of Synapse. First, it provides access to Azure Open Datasets, which is what these datasets are here. The second section is notebooks, and this is a set of notebooks that you can launch directly into the studio to start getting started with some samples for the Spark engine. It provides a set of sample pipelines as well and templates that you can learn from and build off for building solutions for integrating other data that Synapse Link doesn't support today in Synapse. Really useful for your other clouds, even sort of on-premise hybrid data integration, and even SaaS applications can be integrated using the pipelines as well. But in this case, we're going to use the SQL scripts. And so I'm actually going to start, there's a few that we're going to use here today, actually. But the first one we're going to start with is right at the top here, which is Azure, analyze Azure open data sets using Serverless SQL.